the last EDL special lecture one. So today's lecture is the last one. So I hope you enjoy and you study much from this lecture. And I'm very happy to introduce you Professor Ichikawa, who is now the director of Japan Monkey Center at Inuyama, and Professor Emeritus of University Kyoto. So today he came from Kyoto, far from here, and he will give you a talk about conservation of tropical rainforest and the indigenous people in Africa. That means how conservation of forest and the life of indigenous people could be compatible. So this subject must be very much related to your subject, because to EDL special lecture I invited many of my friends. My friend means medical impressive public health background, medical background, international cooperation background, development. But his talk is, I believe, is more close to your subject. I know that many of you are studying about conservation of the forest. And the subject, deforestation or conservation of the forest is, of course, since long time, it's the interest of researcher, scientists. But now it's more and more attracting people because of climate change. Because the major source of CO2 emission is from deforestation of such big rainforest. African rainforest is one of the biggest forests. That's why it is very related to your subject. And in his lecture, you can see many African ethnics picture and so on. So it must be very interesting for you. And the last time, it was 2 years ago, there were many questions after his question. So today also, I hope you raise many questions and comments. Okay, please listen carefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ichikawa. I'm going to talk on Africa and African people. And first of all, I'd like to ask you, is there anyone who has been to Africa? Which part of Africa? Have you been? Kenya? To see wildlife there? Yes. Okay. Any others? Which part of Africa have you been? South Africa, yes. Okay, very good. Anyone else? Tunisia, North Africa. I see, okay. And then? Africa. Which part of Africa? North Africa? Yes. Tunisia? I see. Egypt. Very good. Okay. The Africa, part of Africa I'm going to talk is on Central Africa, forested Africa, dominated by tropical rainforest. But before, it's too big. How? 大きすぎるんじゃないか? Before going, I would like first to introduce myself and my own work. I studied zoology and animal ecology in the undergraduate course, particularly the Japanese monkeys in the undergraduate course, and then moved to anthropology in the graduate school at Kyoto University. Kyoto University then has 3 courses of anthropology. At the time when I entered into the graduate school, it was 1971. First, paleoanthropology. That is the study on fossil man and fossil primates and on morphological evolution. And the second one is primatology, studying on living primates our closest relatives in the animal world. Kyoto University was then already famous, known for their work on primatology, primate behavior, especially cultural behavior and ecology. And the third one is a study on living human population, in particular hunter-gatherers in the tropical areas. Because the anthropology laboratory of Kyoto University was, at that time, devoted itself to the study of human evolution. So three approaches are employed for unraveling the human evolution history. And I took the third course, the study on living human population, in particular hunter-gatherers in tropical areas, particularly in Africa, which started just a few years ago before I entered into the graduate school. As a training or preparatory fieldwork, I made a research in the Ryukyu archipelago on the coral fishermen as a training. Then after that, I was dispatched to Central Africa, Congo. At the time, it was called Zaire, to study the Mubuti pygmies in the northeastern part of the Congo Basin. It was 1974, and I stayed there almost an entire year. Excuse me, I'm suffering from backache, so may I sit down? Thank you. My major interest is subsistence activities and social organizations that adapted to the natural environment, forest environment in particular. Hunting and gathering and social organization which is relevant to hunting and gathering activities. That is my major research. And I discussed the data in relation to its implication for understanding the human evolutionary history. And based on these studies, I was trying to reconstruct the life of our ancestors from ecological and social viewpoints. And then after finishing the studies in Zaire, now called Democratic Republic of Congo, I moved to Congo-Brazzaville on the opposite side of the Congo River. Congo-Brazzaville is a former French colony, and Zaire was former Belgian colony. And then to Cameroon, to farther west, to study other groups of so-called pygmy peoples. Now, contemporary hunter-gatherers are not living in an identical situation with our ancestors in Paleolithic era. They are, of course, the people of our age, our contemporary, and as such, facing various problems of the modern world, such as poverty, sickness, environmental destruction, and so on. And the last one, the environmental issue has become my major interest during the course of the fieldwork. Since 1990s, particularly since 1992, when the Rio Summit was held, conservation of biological diversity has become a global concern. Conservation of tropical rainforests, which accommodates rich biological diversity, has become a major global issue. In Central Africa, this came out as massive movement toward conservation of tropical rainforest. Conservationists such as WWF, that is Worldwide Fund for Nature, Greenpeace, and other big international NGOs have been actively promoting the project, which aim at establishing protected areas for fauna and flora. They say, don't cut trees, don't hunt animals, or don't collect plants in the protected areas. However, This means to the people who have been living in the forest that they are deprived of their means of livelihood. In fact, the access of the people is restricted to the forest resources, which they have been customarily using for many centuries. This is really a problem for the local indigenous people, since they have no other means for making their living. My research interest has therefore moved from evolutionary interest to a more contemporary issue, that is how to integrate the global issue of forest conservation with the need of local people, that is how to secure means of livelihood, or to contribute poverty reduction or poverty alleviation, if I use the term of World Bank. I will talk on this topic today, that is on the reconciliation between the global issue of forest conservation and the local issue of people's livelihood. Now let's start with the slide. And this is the Congo River near the Kisangani, formerly called Stanleyville. The Congo Basin, thank you very much. Rainforest covered an area of approximately 150 to 170 million hectares, which stored at least 30 to 40 billion tons of carbon. It is the second largest tropical forest block in the world, after the Amazon. Why the forest is important? The forest in this region attracts global attention for various reasons. First, for its wood resources, which comprise one of the major export products and are expected to bring substantial national revenue, foreign exchange. Second, for its biological diversity, which is first in Africa in the diversity of mammals and bird species, and third in floral diversity. There are also rare and endangered mammal species, such as lowland gorillas, mountain gorillas, chimpanzees, and bonobos. Bonobos is the smaller relatives of chimpanzees. Okapis, do you know okapis? Okapis? Okapi, you can see it at Zourasia Zoo in Yokohama. It looks like ancient giraffe, but its legs is covered with striped skin, black and white striped skin, but here dark brown. Very strange animals, which is first recorded in the 20th century. Anyway, okapis is in Africa. And gorillas, chimpanzees, wild gorillas and chimpanzees are you can only see these animals in Africa, like African forest. And forest elephants, and so on. For such a rich biological diversity, conservationists set 11 landscape areas in Central Africa for nature conservation and sustainable management of the natural environment. So biological diversity is very important. Thirdly, there is a growing interest in the global environmental services, in particular in the forest as carbon sequesters, carbon storage, because tropical forests store about 200 and 300 tons of carbon per hectare of forest areas. If the forests are cut, in the future, the carbon will be released in the form of dioxide, carbon dioxide, into the air with the effect of global warming. So there are therefore a global concern for the forest conservation in this region. However, we should not forget that there are almost 60 million local people who depend heavily on the forest resources for fuels, food, medicine, tools, and ornament, and other material culture. In particular, there are so-called indigenous peoples. Who's indigenous people? I'll talk in more detail later. indigenous people who are most dependent on the forest resources, but they are underprivileged compared with other people in social and political aspects. Therefore, the problem is how to reconcile these opposing interests in the global concern for conservation on the one hand, and the need of local people on the other. Concerning these issues, there are two important international movements. One is the influence of the report by UK government on climate change and effect, the economics of climate change, published in 2006, which is also called the Stern Review, because Sir Nicholas Stern, former World Bank economist, directed the review. According to this review, it is said that the overall costs and risks of climate change will be losing 5% global GDP, or the damage could rise even to 20% of GDP. In contrast, the cost of reducing greenhouse gas emissions can be limited around 1%, just 1% of global GDP each year. This means the action for reducing CO2 emission is necessary and also economically viable, much more economical. So the problem is not just the conflict between economy and environment. Also economically, conservation of the forest is viable. The other is the, is a movement based on UN Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People. According to the declaration, indigenous people have the rights to the full enjoyment of all human rights, free from any kind of discrimination, freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. The problem is therefore how to combine these two movements, forest conservation on the one hand and the welfare of indigenous peoples on the other. But who are the indigenous people in Africa? According to the World Bank requires special safeguard procedures for the indigenous people in their operational policy, or operational directives. According to OD 420, Operational Directive, point 20, indigenous people have close attachment to ancestral territories and to the natural resources in these areas. So which means the newcomers could not be regarded as indigenous people. B, self-identification and identification by others as member of a distinct cultural group. C, an indigenous language, often different from the national language. Presence of customary social and political institutions. And primarily subsistence-oriented production. Now, in the New World, these criteria may suffice for most of the cases because it is relatively clear who are the indigenous people. However, these criteria do not fit the African situation in which many other dominant ethnic groups also meet these criteria. In the African context, so the African Commission, there is an organization called African Commission of Human and People's Rights. It addresses the issue in the following way. Almost all African states host a rich variety of different ethnic groups, Basically, all of these groups are indigenous to Africa. However, some are in a structurally subordinate position to the dominating groups, and the state leading to the marginalization and discrimination. It is this situation which the indigenous concept in its modern analytic form and the international legal framework attached to it addresses. So in this context, Pygmy people on whom I'm going to talk today are indigenous people in Central African forests, since they are marginalized, discriminated, and placed in a structurally subordinate position. Now, back to the environmental issue. There has been a new trend in the forest issue that stems from the recognition of environmental services provided by the forest. Deforestation is the second largest factor for greenhouse gas, CO2 gas emission, accounting for 1/5, 20% of the annual gas emission, of which nearly half is from Africa, where 4 million hectares are deforested each year, according to the report of FAO in 2006. According to the environmental economists, avoiding deforestation is economically viable. Because it is estimated that developing countries that produce wood, to produce timber, receive, by destroying the trees, between $1 and $5 per ton, whereas each ton of carbon emitted could cause $85 of damage in the global economy. Hence, paying for protecting them is economically viable, both for the developing countries and the global communities. Based on such an understanding, a new scheme, Forest Carbon Partnership Facilities, FCFP, was initiated under the leadership of World Bank. It is to assist developing countries in the effort to reduce emissions from deforestation and degradation by providing value to standing forest. FCFPF will pay developing countries for their forest conservation. For example, DRC, former Zaire, is one of the pilot countries for which this facility is to be applied, and we receive grant support for reduced emission from deforestation. The annual deforestation rate in the DRC is estimated about 580,000 hectares, and each hectare of rainforest contains 200 to 300 tons of carbon. If 20% of the deforestation is prevented, and the carbon price is paid, say, $400 per ton for the forest preservation, for the forest conservation, then potential remuneration from avoided deforestation could be estimated at $100 million a year, every year. So it seems to be a very good, very good deal. But there are risks in this scheme. Conservation of forests may bring enormous economic benefits, but without adequate consultation or prior strengthening of communities' land tenure rights and forest law enforcement capacity within countries, FCFP or REDD, RED, reduced emission from deforestation and degradation, may end up without equitable benefit for the poor people, especially for the forest-dependent indigenous peoples. And second, without proper planning and approach, it would risk exacerbating conflicts between conservationist groups and forest-dependent populations, and it would eventually lead to the expropriation of indigenous people and the violation of their customary rights. However, we think that there may be a way to combine forest conservation with the people's welfare. That is the use of non-timber forest products, NTFP. The use of NTFP, which is extracted from the living trees and animals, which depend on them, is compatible with carbon sequestration and other environmental services, so far as it does not deteriorate the forest ecosystem, because it is a method of using, so to say, using the interest of root without damaging the capital or tree itself. It will enable us to integrate the global interest, the RED, reducing emission from deforestation and degradation, that is global interest, with local welfare, exploiting economic value of NTFPs. But there is a problem of sustainability of forest resource use. As I will discuss later, the sustainability is realized through securing the people's customary rights to the forest. If free access by the outsiders is restricted or controlled, the local people will be able to avoid overexploitation through a long-term sustainable management plan. Then, how much economic value NTFPs may produce? The World Bank experts once estimated the economic value produced by the forest of DRC. According to its report, the market value from timber production, both formal and informal combined, is the formal is by paying tax or register. Informal is the secret, without paying tax and not registered, not authorized. Both combined is estimated about $160 million per annum, per year. Whereas the total economic value of the resources used by local people, such as firewood, bushmeat, honey, medicines, and other non-timber forest products, is by far the more important, amounting to well over $2 billion per annum, per year. Other social, cultural significance of forest is almost immeasurable, cannot be measured. Ecotourism and carbon sequestration may add substantial value to these in the near future. So, non-timber forest and other, sorry? Hi.
What about the environmental impacts of bushmeat?
I'll talk later. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So let us summarize the issue. Deforestation accounts for 1/5 of CO2 emission, the second largest sources of emission after the energy sector. Developing countries receive $1 to $5 per ton per carbon base, whereas each ton emitted could cause $85 of damage to the global economy. Therefore, forest conservation is an effective and economical means to reduce emissions. On the other hand, NTFPs produce more economic value than logged timber, $1 billion per year, vs. $200 million in DRC. So NTFP use is more effective for poverty alleviation. Tourism and environmental services are expected to add more value in the future. So the effective means to solve the two problems together is to combine forest conservation with NTFP's uses. Now let us go to the forest world of Central Africa. But before going, pause. Take a little rest. Questions? Bushmeat, I will talk later. This problem. Hi.
Can we ask other questions about your research?
My research, I will take.
Questions?
Yeah.
What was the language
In the field.
in the indigenous groups? How did you communicate?
The indigenous group speaks the Bantu language, Bantu a D group language, and I mainly use the lingua franca, Swahili dialect in those areas. And in Congo Brazzaville, I use Lingala language. It's also a lingua franca. And in Cameroon, Baka language as well as French.
How long did it take you to learn these languages?
Swahili is easy. Just 1 month you can speak. Because its vowel system is very similar to Japanese. 5 vowels. No complicated pronunciation, no complicated vowels, consonants like English or French. Much easier for us Japanese. No accent, not very strong intonation.
Do you speak some Swahili right now?
Yeah, right now? Yeah. Later. Zuri. Unasikia Swahili?
No, I don't.
Okay, this is Swahili. Unasikia, do you understand Swahili? Orobaka Lingala? You speak Lingala? This is a Lingala. Any other questions? Aye.
The values of the nature resources into economic.
That is World Bank specialists do it. Even for those for used in the household, they have a method of calculating them in economic values.
But will they consider the indigenous people's?
Not people. Not people themselves. World Bank specialists converted the items consumed in the household to economic value. There is a special formula for them. I don't know very well about it. Huh?
I mean, the different utilization method, the value is also different.
Which?
For example, if the forest, the wood is used for household, its value is not high, but it is used in other.
No. Even the used in the household, the World Bank specialists convert it into economic value. If they are bought in the market, how much does it cost? Then they calculate it into economic values. If those they are restricted from getting those resources, if they are forced to buy them, how much does it cost? Then they calculate from that. So, I
to forestry sector. So I was wondering if it's just how we cut the trees, the logging that produces CO2, or does it include deforestation, as in we cut this many trees, means this much less CO2 can be absorbed?
That is, I don't know, but they calculate on the mass of wood. So not consider the difference in the nature of wood. mainly, they don't care about the species, tree species, how much tons of carbon per square miles or per square kilometers or hectare, and then calculate. Okay, now I proceed to my research, okay? So, the indigenous forest people in Central Africa, known as pygmies, are called by different names and speak different language in different areas, such as Mubuti and Efe in the Ituri forest of DRC, and Batwa in the Great Lake regions, Bachua in Equatorial region of DRC, Baka in Cameroon, and Aka in Central African Republic and Congo Brazzaville. The number is estimated between 200,000 to 1 million in total, but there is no reliable census data. When I was employed by the World Bank as a specialist, I proposed these numbers between 200,000 and 1 million, but there's no, no evidence for that, just I guess. And it is still used, this number. Because there are some census taken before, but in the census they don't distinguish pygmies and others, because to do so will hinder the nation building of the country, because they at the time was eager to build a nation, unified nation. So they didn't at the time distinguish pygmy and other people. But anyway, there is no good census data. They live in a small residential groups of 50 to 60 people and lead, at least in part, a nomadic life in the forest. They have no traditional chiefs nor any other central authority and enjoy egalitarian social life characterized by extensive sharing practices. They mainly subsist by hunting, especially for forest lichens, and collecting a variety of forest plants for food, medicine, and material culture. This photograph on the left shows the forest camp of Mubuti pygmies in DRC, and the right is the forest lichen captured in the nets. They do a collective net hunting. They set the net with a diameter of about 100 to 150 meters and chase the animals toward the nets. Chase the animals toward the net, and animals, if the animals entangled in the net, they will catch. Most of the indigenous pygmy people group maintains exchange relationship with Bantu and Sudanic-speaking agriculturalists. Through this long-standing relationship, pygmy people have specialized as hunter-gatherers and as such connected though loosely, with other parts of a wider society. But this relationship is not formed on equal terms. The political representation in a wider society has been almost monopolized by the dominant or patron villagers, while the constitutions of Central African countries guarantees the fundamental rights and equality for all of its citizens, including culturally minority peoples. The reality is quite different. They are actually underprivileged. Now, this is an aerial view of the forest in Equatorial region of DRC. Photograph was taken from a helicopter during the mission of World Bank inspection panel to DRC to investigate the forestry reform project, in which I was also involved as an anthropologist. As you see, the Congo forest is actually composed of mosaic vegetation, of mature forest, secondary forest, and crop fields. The relatively intact forest extends toward the left side. The Mubuti pygmies forest camp in the morning mist. Several to 20 huts are arranged in a circle facing to one another, which facilitate mutual communication, but with little privacy. Everyone can see each other. In the forest, the heated air ascends in the daytime and cooled high in the sky, then falls as a rain. Next morning, mist rises again and warmth rise, cool in the sky, then fall again. In this way, the water circulates in the tropical forest environment. But once the forest is cleared, water cannot be captured, and water will flow away from the forest, which makes this circulation impossible. The rain eventually decreases, the forest vegetation will not recover any longer. Now let us look at how much the people depend on the forest resources. As we see in this slide of a Mubuti pygmy camp, plants play very important roles in their life as food, medicine, construction materials, decoration, and other materials of life. The small hut is 100% made of plant materials, grating the nuts of Gyrobacteriodendron for food, and there are material culture such as combs made of wood. You will see Gyrobacteriodendron nuts being grated, combs, chairs, and hats, leaf-thatched hats, dome-shaped hats. We are impressed by this fact and collected at the initial stage of our study many plant specimens in the forest along with their names, along with their vernacular names and information on their uses and other ethnobotanical information. To illustrate some of the examples of plant use, the forest is often described as cornucopia of food. Cornucopia is the home of abundance. In the Greek mythology, it provides a variety of food species. The Mubuti people of the Ituri forest use more than 100 species for food, including the oil-rich nuts of Ervingia species, which is widely used and even traded in Central Africa, the energy-rich starchy food like canarium fruit and viriums, sweet and sour fruits of Landorfia. You see the names of the plants here, but difficult to see. Anonidium afromomum are frequently used by local inhabitants, but they are even sold at local markets. Some of these are also sold in France, in parts of Paris, frequented by African peoples. I saw it, some of them in the Paris, sold on the street. Tropical rainforest is like a chemical factory. Many plants in tropical rainforests accumulate various toxic substances called secondary compounds as adaptation against herbivorous animals feeding. Some of these, if administered properly, could be used as medicine for curing diseases or as poison for hunting and fishing. In the Ituri forest of Zaire, we recorded about 200 species that are used for such purposes. Also important is the use of plants for material culture, with more than 300 species recorded from the Ituri forest. The traditional material culture is simple, consisting of less than 100 items in total, including materials for construction, transportation, tools for hunting, gathering, cooking, and for decoration. The upper left side shows the use of Maniopiton fulvum, bark fibers, for making hunting nets. Lower left, the barks of figs for making bark cloth. And upper right is the fruits juice of Rothmania for personal beautification, for decoration. Almost 80% of the material culture are made either totally or in part of plant materials that are abundant in the forest. In addition to the plants directly used, hundreds of plants are useful in indirect ways as nectar source of honeybee, and food of animals which are hunted, fished, and collected by the people. While many of the high trees have no direct use, they are an important source of honey, highly prized food as concentrated sweets, which is rare in the natural state. They also like to eat the meat of wild animals and various insects feeding on the plants. The Mubuti in the Ituri forest believe that the forest is imbued with a supernatural being called a Pakmandura, father of the forest, literally meaning the father of the forest, who controls everything, all the life in the forest. Certain tree species are ritually protected because they are considered to be a visible agent of this supernatural being. It is strictly forbidden to cut or break these trees. Some of these forest products comprise important source of cash income, as shown in this slide. These include protein-rich leaves of gnetum, about 30% of dry weight is protein. Oil-producing nuts and condiments, and in particular, bushmeat as important source of protein. The problem with bushmeat I will discuss later, so wait. These are exchanged with traders and then sold at local markets. We are now planning to promote commercialization of these products for increasing the income of the forest people. Except for these, most of the other forest plants have little or no commercial value, but they are still indispensable to maintaining their life and culture. Forest animals are an important source of protein, but they believe some of the wild animals may cause bad diseases. If they are eaten by certain people, such animals are called bad animals, a query in the local term, which may cause diseases of small children. They and their parents therefore avoid eating these bad animals, which have evil spirit and may cause diseases to their dependent children. These animals have negative values, but they provide the people with the idea of the culturally constructed reason for diseases and other misfortunes that people suffer. In these ways, the forest plants and animals also provide the people with the basis of their cultural identity, as illustrated by the sacred tree or bad animals with evil spirits. The destruction of forests will therefore result in the deterioration of the culture that is heavily dependent on the forest. The rich ethnobotanical knowledge of the forest people represent human cultural heritage that has been accumulated over many centuries. It is necessary to preserve such knowledge and to understand the diverse potentials of the forest rainforest, tropical rainforest, through examining the knowledge of forest plants and animals. We have been engaged in the Aflora database project, which aims at constructing a database of wild plant uses in tropical Africa. For each specimen collected in the field, ethnobotanical information is recorded and put into a computer using the Aflora information format, as shown in this slide. The information of this database can be accessed, edited, or supplemented by any qualified person and from anywhere through internet system. We have put the sample data of several thousand specimens from mainly from Central Africa. This is an example of the data in a Flora database showing the data on the Gilbertiodendron debris belonging to Cisalpinaceae family. It is one of the dominant trees in the northwestern part of the Congo Basin, while the loggers are not interested much in this species because it doesn't grow straight. But it is still important to the local people. We also record the names of the person who provided the information to show to whom the knowledge originally belonged. In these ways, the forest peoples utilize diverse potential of forest. Their life and culture cannot be maintained without the forest and cannot be maintained without the forest in its entirety. Therefore, the forest conservation and the people's culture are inseparable. How about then the impact of the forest environment imposed by humans? How is the impact, human impact on the forest? Now I'm going to talk on this. Any question? Okay, to proceed? Okay, after that. Let me drink. During the initial stage of ethnobotanical research in the Ituri forest, we recorded more than 100 edible plant species, as I mentioned earlier. Of these, 10 to 15 species of major food species actually provide 80% of the wild plant food consumed by the people. Not all the food species are of equal importance. Some are very important, some are not so important. We have also recorded the habitats of these plants and found that many of the major food plants require sufficient sunlight for germination and growth. Anthrocarion and Lichnodendron, for example, produce oil-rich edible nuts, while they are often found today as the big canopy trees in the dense forest. They are actually shade intolerant and must have germinated and grown in the place where there was sufficient light before. Big trees of Canarium, it's a big tree, it's called the candle trees in English, which produce olive-like tasty fruit. I will show you the slide later. It's another example of sun trees. It's found today deep in the forest. But such a place is often said to have been once inhabited by humans. When I saw a big tree of Canarium in the forest, people say it was here, there was a people living there before. Such, because it is a sun tree, cannot grow without sufficient sunlight. Such sun trees comprise 8 species out of 13 major food species among the multi-pygmy food. These plants must have grown in the gaps or clearings where sufficient light once reached to the ground. These are the examples, some of the examples of sun trees. Landolphia fruits on the right. The fruit is sour and sweet. And you see the white latex on the leaves. That latex is once collected as a white rubber during the First World War and also during the Second World War. It is also called a red rubber because when exposed to the air, its color turned into brown, red color. But it has another meaning. Rubber with blood, because to collect the latex from this lianas, the Belgian people forced people, Congolese people, to collect. They set a very, very strict, very heavy norma, quota, for collecting the latex of this species. But it is now only used for food, the fruit. And Afromomum on the right side is sweet and sour fruits also. And it was before dried and exported to Western country, before the Asian pepper was imported from Asian imported from Asia, reached to the European countries. This Afromomum species, Afromomum seeds, were exported to Europe, but it now only used for domestic use, as a condiment and for fruit, fresh fruit. Then, where are such gaps or disturbed places in the forest? In the forest, there are scattered gaps made by storms, lightnings, and other natural causes. In addition to these natural gaps, there are also human-made gaps in the forest. For collecting honey, they sometimes cut down a tree with an axe, thus making a gap similar to the natural one. When they open a new camp, they clear small to medium-sized trees, which allow sunlight to reach the ground. In these ways, human habitation and activities have the effect of improving the light condition of the forest. There are, if you look around the campsite, there are seedlings of food plants around the campsite, such as Randolphia on the right side, and the Trichuria, and Lychnodendron on the right side, and the Randolphia on the left side, that have germinated from the food remains, grown under favorable light condition. In this way, the food resources are generated from the discarded parts of food plants. Discarded parts are just rubbish and thrown away in our country. But in the forest, they are the source of regeneration and reproduction. Moreover, there is also an effect of soil improvement, soil enrichment. Large quantities of minerals and organic matters are concentrated in the campsite in the form of food, fuels, and other resources which are collected from a wide range of forests, concentrated and consumed in the camp. While there is hardly reliable data on such concentration effect by human activities, a rough estimation could be attempted here. In an African hunter-gatherer camp, a household composed of 5 persons use about 10 to 15 kilograms of firewood a day. The firewood consumed by 10 households or 50 people, which is the average size of the Mbuti pygmy camp, during a 1 month period, thus amounts to 3 to 4.5 tons. And the ashes from the firewood are deposited around the campsite. There are also minerals and organic matter supplied from the food. But all of these are not absorbed by the soil. The nitrogen supplied from the food alone is roughly estimated to be equivalent to 200 kilograms of ammonium sulfate. That is, ammonium sulfate is widely used as chemical fertilizer. A group of 50 people deposit such an amount of nutrients in a month's stay at a forest camp. They therefore contribute to concentrating these otherwise thinly distributed soil nutrients in localized patches, that is, in the campsite. Though we need quantitative data for evaluating such concentration effect of human activities. The tropical rainforests are characterized by poor soil, are said to be very poor in soil nutrients. The soil nutrients in the tropical rainforest are quickly absorbed by the plants and stored there in the plant body. Then the plants are eaten by humans as well as by animals, which are then hunted and consumed by humans, and finally return to the soil in a concentrated form. In this way, human activities and habitation contribute to circulating the materials in the forest as long as the forest remains as closed system. But this is not the case. How do they conceive such a forest? What is the image of the forest? The Mobutu sometimes refer to the forest as father or mother, who guards them and provides them with all the things they need, food, medicine, and other materials of life. They are therefore the children of the forest. They also describe the forest covered with thick canopy as a womb, uterus. That is the most comfortable place in which they stay before birth. It is the place where they come from. Also, when asked about the death, they say that the body remains underground where it is buried, but that the dead person himself or herself, or in our term, his or her soul, goes to the most interior part of the forest and stays there, living like the living. They sometimes encounter with the dead ancestors deep in the forest, probably in dreams, but I don't know. And learn from the ancestors. They say that they learn from the ancestors new songs and dances to be played in the spirit ritual performances, which are very energetic and exciting. The forest is therefore the place where they come from, the womb, the place where they go, they return after death. Human life is thus also circulating in the forest, just like the materials or the soil nutrients that are first in the soil, absorbed by the plants, which are eaten by animals and humans, then return to the soil. Human life is also circulating in the forest in this way. To summarize, while human life and culture heavily depend on diverse forest resources, forest ecosystem or resource base itself is in turn maintained by human habitation and activities. In other words, human and forest are interdependent on each other. But such an interdependent system between man and forest has been maintained only on the condition that the forest resources are circulating in a closed system, which is actually different from reality. Particularly, when the various forest resources are transported out from the forest to the broader world for commercial purposes, that is brought into an open system, such a circulation system cannot be maintained. In this case, resource base could not be maintained without sustainable management attempt. Now come to the bushmeat problem. One of the problems caused by commercial-oriented open system is so-called bushmeat crisis. Wild animals had long been hunted for subsistence purposes by the forest people. As long as the animals are hunted only for their own subsistence, there will be no problem. However, once the trade starts, an enormous amount of bushmeat is transported out from the forest to distant towns as a cheap protein source. It is also valued for the town people who have lost contact with the wilderness of the forest as the source of wildpower, which they believe could not be obtained from beef, pork, chickens, or any other domesticated animals. Actually, in some big cities in Central Africa, bushmeat is more expensive than beef, imported beef. People like it. So hunting has been accelerating, and it has become a threat to wild animals, including rare and endangered species. It may finally lead to a so-called empty forest syndrome, where no animals are found, even if forest itself remains empty forest. Therefore, the problem is how to reconcile between nature conservation and the people's subsistence needs. This would only be possible by implementing sustainable resource management plan. Another example is large-scale logging. Since the 1980s, when the economic crisis hit the Central African countries, logging operation has been accelerating. Large amounts of organic matters are transported out of the forest, and the capacity of the forest to capture water reduced considerably. The soils are directly hit by the rain falling on the cleared ground and washed away into the rivers. The circulation system in the forest is no longer maintained. Since the 1990s, logging operation has been accelerating, mainly because of the economic crisis of the Central African countries. Such sweeping waves of logging operations have reached the interior forest, even to the villages of the remotest part of the forest. Loss of the forest has thus endangering the life of the forest people. It also brings about global problems such as greenhouse gas emission and loss of biodiversity. So, there are global and local issues concerning the tropical rainforest conservation. The global issue is the environmental services provided by the forest, in particular, the role of carbon sequestration, for which the payment is now being discussed by REDD+ framework, a reduced emission from deforestation or degradation framework. The local issue is to secure the life and the culture of the forest-living peoples and to alleviate their poverty. This may be possible by the sustainable use of NTFPs for livelihood and for commercial purposes, earning cash in particular. In order to combine these two requirements effectively and successfully, a social system is indispensable in which people themselves are responsible for the conservation and sustainable use of the forest. First, there must be fair and equitable share of the benefit from REDD, REDD+, to the local people. The appropriate use of benefit is indispensable to the successful implementation of the REDD program. Second, it is necessary to secure customary rights to the forest, based on which participatory management system can be established to effective means of conservation and sustainable use of the forest. A little bit rest. Then I'll talk on a project in Cameroon. Questions?
Yeah, this is really, really interesting because I studied anthropology in the United States about 100 years ago. So
100 years ago.
Well, not quite that much, but close to it. Yeah, almost 100.
You are very old.
You talked about camps as concentrated nutrients, right? Many different kinds. What about human waste? Could you?
Yeah. Human waste is, I propose to weigh the human waste to a student of mine, but he refused. Rather than to measure the waste, he weighed the items brought into the camp, then calculate the mineral and organic matters composition. That is more comfortable for him. Yeah.
Human waste
Yeah.
in this traditional society,
Yeah.
is human waste a disease threat? I mean, because like in traditional Nihon society, there was always
Yeah,
problem.
they do not use deliberately. They rather dislike the use of human manures. But naturally, it is absorbed in the soil. Yeah. So it has a role in the soil for improving the soil nutrients.
So it has a low disease impact on the society.
Yeah, but if they stay too long, they think now it's dirty here, let's move. Yeah. Hi.
You mentioned that the NTFB is a little bit helping also as a cash source, cash income source. But then I'm wondering, looking at these people you have just shown, what do these people use cash for? And how much like modernization coming into, or any sign to be like modernized?
Very good question. They want cash. For what purpose? Buying alcohol, mostly, and kerosene for lamp, clothes, cooking pans, mostly consumer goods. They know how to use cash since a long time ago, but they don't know how to store them, how to invest, how to increase them. They only use the money for buying something, not to save, not to store, not to try to increase them.
So I think that you said that as long as they use forest resources in a closed system, so more or less it's maintained sustainably, and I do agree with it. But then once this kind of so-called modernization and the cash economy coming in, then it's very difficult to maintain their life like closed system.
Yeah.
Then their lifestyle eventually is not going to be sustainable way. Initially,
Yeah.
I thought that only bush trader or logging people from outside is kind of destroying their closed system. But if they are already modernized and they have that tendency, it's become kind of difficult to say.
Yeah, they want cash to buy consumer goods, but as long as their desire is controlled, they are not, want excessive money. In our society, people want more than they need. That is not, well, at the moment it has not, they have not reached in such a situation.
Just one more point I want to make is that the place where my research field is Peruvian Amazon, and then the place is a bit more modernized. And in that area, I'm also looking at NTFB, but the NTFB really doesn't support any life anymore because the income is so low.
Well, in which area you say?
Peruvian Amazon? Amazon. Peru.
Peru.
Amazon
I
in
see.
Peru.
But,
I don't go far deep inside like
it's
people-
forest areas? Or?
Forest area. Yeah.
I see. But in forest area in Amazonia, there are many studies on NTFP use. And according to some studies, there is a book, Alternative Forest Use, entitled Alternative Forest, in which I read the people earn more from NTFP than from, say, herding, clear the forest or logging. They say, in the longer term. Once the tree is cut, at the end, they use wood. Wood is the final product, dead part of the plant. But NTFP continues to produce. So if you see the things in a longer term, the situation will change.
Thank you.
One question
Eh?
from
Yes, I don't know.
So I think, for example, Cameroon government is forcing or encouraging policy of settlement to such people hunting gathering.
Yes.
And I recently in International Health Conference I had one report reporting that these situations increased the population. And my question is, in general, African governments are taking similar position like Cameroon government.
Yes.
Yes.
Because they want the nomadic people to sedentarize.
Yeah.
There is a various reason. One reason is to collect tax.
Yeah.
One reason is to educate them and to have them health cares. And another reason, important reason, is to secure labor force for agricultural production. In tropical forest, land is not a problem. Land is vast and plenty of land. But the bottleneck is manpower to clear the forest, to maintain the field, cultivated field. For that labor, they need the people, particularly the pygmy people, to sedentarize, to recruit them as a labor force to cultivate. That is the policy taken in the 1960s by the French and Cameroonian government.
So people living in pure, how can I say, hunting, gathering style is decreasing. How was
Actually speaking, pure hunting, gathering people had not been in Central Africa since, say, 500-600 years ago. They have come to contact with the Bantu agriculturists maybe 10,000 years ago, or at least 500 years ago. So since then, they are keeping exchange relationship with agricultural people. And some of them themselves do some agriculture on a very small scale.
Another question is about family and society, community. You said one group is 20 or 60 persons.
Yeah.
And my simple question is how they try to find partner. How they marry.
They
polygamy,
a lot.
polygamy is polygamy or more.
People always want polygamy, but it's not possible for every man or woman, every man. But people often travel for very long distance, more than 100 kilometers. So the pygmy culture is very uniform in the forest of Cameroon, in the western part of Congo Basin, compared with the Bantu people who speak different in small groups, speak different language. Pygmy culture is very uniform because of the high mobility among themselves.
So they are looking for a partner. They are partners.
Yes, in the course of traveling, they got by chance.
And in general, if we look back the human being history, after hunting, gathering, if people settle doing agriculture, population increase very rapidly.
Yes, I think so.
That's why I'm wondering whether egalitarian equity important society like Mobutu. How can I say? So the relationship between equity sense, and number of population or family size, family style.
Yeah. If the number of people increase in one group, they will simply split into two groups. The first area is plenty of land, so no problem splitting to go other places. Population density is very low, about 0.3 to 0.4 per square kilometers. 0.3 per square kilometers. Population density is very sparsely inhabited area, so they can go. But now the national, that area is, in that area, national parks are established, in which people cannot live, so land may be a problem in the next decade.
My question is related to Wakasugi. It's about our history of their culture. When was there like this or subsistence activity established, and does their activity still improve without like modernization? Like for example, like they find like new food, they find new medicine still now, so like this kind of thing.
No, every culture is facing change, and their culture also changed, and especially hunting techniques has changed during the last, say, 30 years. Before, they didn't use much the steel wires and firearms for hunting, but they now use shotguns borrowed from the villagers and steel wires to catch very efficiently the wild animals. But before, they only used the snares of plant material. It's not so efficient. So their hunting technology also changed. The food has much little change. They ate almost the same things as they ate 100 years ago, say. But only the difference is sugar and alcoholic drinks. Those are introduced recently. But starchy food like cassava, like plantains and cassavas and taros, macabo in French, it's new art relatives of taro, was introduced nearly very long time ago, nearly 100 years or more. Cassava was introduced to the area about, I don't know, not so old as in the coastal areas, maybe 100 years.
One more point.
Yeah.
Or how did other Cameroon people think like me?
So that is the problem. They are classified as, they are recognized as indigenous people because they are subordinate. They are discriminated by other standard Cameroonian people. That's why they are called indigenous people by the definition of African Commission on Human Peoples' Rights. The Constitution of Cameroon, of course, guarantees the fundamental equality of all of its citizens, but actually not. No Baka civil servant in Cameroon. Now, can I proceed? Then, final section, let me introduce our new project in Cameroon. We have been carrying out a project sponsored by JICA and JST for scientific cooperation with Cameroonian counterpart on the conservation and the sustainable use of the forest resources. It consists of two components. The first component is intensification of agriculture around the forest by improving the productivity. This aims at mitigating spatial expansion of agricultural land. This comprises an agricultural component of the project. The second, in which I was involved, comprises a forest component which aims at evaluation of alternative economic and cultural potentials of the forest for enhancing incentives for forest conservation and sustainable use. The forest component include the evaluation of the importance of NTFPs to the culture and livelihood, including household income, evaluating the ecological potentials of NTFP in the forest. That is availability and abundance of NTFPs in the forest, ecological survey. And third, establishing customary rights to the forest resources through participatory mapping. And fourth, capacity development of the forest living people for forest management through working with researchers. The basic concept is that use of NTFP is compatible with carbon sequestration, as I explained, and other environmental services, insofar as it does not deteriorate the forest ecosystem. The problem is, however, the sustainability of forest ecosystem. In a situation in which the forest resources are commercialized and the demand increases, if these resources are accessible by anyone, including the outside people, there will be a risk of overexploitation. If the people freely exploit the resources for a short-term benefit, it will lead to the depletion of the resource base. This is called tragedies of the commons. In order to avoid such deterioration of the resource base, customary rights to the forest should be established, which enables them to use the resources on a long-term sustainable basis. The project in Cameroon, therefore, is composed 3 levels. Ooh. The first level on the bottom deals with ecological potentials of NTFPs, that is, abundance and availability of forest resources. The second level is on the importance or contribution of NTFP to the livelihood and culture and household economy. And the third level is on the local social system, which serves as a mechanism for sustainable forest management. The actual research activities along these lines are carried out with participation of local people. Hence, these activities also provide the local people with capacity development opportunity for sustainable forest management. The project started in 2011 at Guribi village in the east province of Cameroon. Guribi village is comprised of some 400 Baka pygmies, hunter-gatherers, and about a similar number of Bantu farmers, and surrounded by logging concession areas marked by gray zone, and a national park to the south of the village. The people here are suffering from the destruction of the forest, which has been sustaining their life by logging industry on the one hand, and the exclusion from protected areas, that is national park, which they have been utilizing on the other. The project we have to change the research style for launching this project. The research in the 1970s was conducted by myself. When I went to the field for the first time in 1974, I was alone in the field, but felt always relaxed with the friendly Mubuti people. I went back to the same field in 1980 with my newly married wife as a sort of honeymoon. Though she did not seem happy, complaining every day that she would like to return home. It has now become a fond memory for her to have stayed with Murti people in the forest for several months. But she would never say she would return there. But anyway, now for the present research project, as shown below, we have established a research station which is equipped with electricity from generator and solar panels, satellite communication system with internet access, and vehicle. We are now working with young researchers from students from Cameroonian universities and the local peoples of different ethnic background. We are conducting ethnobotanical research, collecting plant specimens with the people, recorded their vernacular names, knowledge of their uses and other information, vegetation survey to study the distribution and abundance of NTFPs in the forest, livelihood survey, weighing all the materials, food and other items brought to the village, and participatory mapping of the forest uses with GPS and GIS system. The last activity aims at visualizing the resource uses by the people in the form of a map, thus facilitating to adjust the forest uses among themselves in order to avoid overexploitation and deterioration of the resources, which would likely to be caused by the free access and excessive competition. I'll give you a few examples of a research activity. For the research on ecological potentials of NTFP in the forest, we selected 10 major species based on the livelihood study and surveyed their phenology, seasonal change, and production. The research method is very simple, so that the local people may easily employ it. 10 to 20 individual trees are selected for each of these species and set 4 traps under each of the canopy to capture the fruits falling onto the ground. The number, availability, and weight of the fruits dropping into the traps were recorded on a weekly basis by a team comprised of 2 Baka and 1 Konabembe, Bantu people. In this way, we tried to record the change in the production of major NTFPs. And this is the result. For example, the result from the survey on the phenology in the fruit production. We'll then also carry out quantitative research on the availability and importance of NTFPs to the livelihood, household economy, and local market. Market studies have been carried out by C4, Center for International Forestry Research, on some of the useful plants such as Irvingia, Gnetam, and a few other species. But no detailed quantitative research is available for Central Africa, in spite of the importance to the livelihood, household economy, and increasing commercial demands. In particular, quantitative data on the importance to local livelihood is not available at all at the moment. For the livelihood survey, we are working with the Baka hunter-gatherers and Konabembe farmers to record all the materials brought back to the village or camp, including the names of the person who brought the materials, vernacular names of the products, their weight, and the places where they were gathered. We also asked some literate, those who have received school education and know how to write and read. We asked such Baka men and Baka people for cooperation. Then the problem of how to avoid the tragedy of the commons. According to the theory of tragedy of the commons, open system to the resources may often lead to overexploitation. because people pursue only short-term benefit without caring about long-term sustainability. How to avoid this tragedy is very important to the sustainable use of the forest resources. We believe that customary rights to the forest enables the local people to use the resources in a long-term sustainable basis. For this purpose, it is necessary, first of all, to visualize the actual and the resource use, actual land and resource use through participatory mapping by using GPS system. Then, basic picture will be obtained on how different groups of people use the resource and space in the forest. This provides them with a basis for discussing about their spaces and resource uses, thus avoiding tragedy of the commons. I hope the project will provide us with a model, a pilot case for integrating forest conservation and sustainable use through participatory mapping. For the mapping purpose, we have first made a distribution of important NTFPs in the forest. This shows the distribution of cultivated fields, or Irvingia nuts, one of the important NTFPs, which produce highly valued edible oily condiments. Then we will try to trace the gathering ground in the forest with GPS system, and the data are analyzed by GIS, which I'm not familiar with, but my young colleagues are good at this. It is to show visually how the individuals and groups use the forest spaces. An example is shown here for the 3 Baka hunter-gatherer groups in Guribe village, our study area. The line with orange, blue, and brown colors show the traces of different groups for collecting activities. Based on this kind of map, we hope the people will discuss about how they could avoid excessive overlapping of the spaces and resource use. In these ways, we employ the methodology of so-called citizen science to facilitate active participation of the local people, which is becoming popular in developed countries, but seldom attempted at in developing countries. We hope our project will also serve as a capacity development of the forest people through these attempts. The project will continue 3 years more. So in the 3rd year, we hope they can manage their resources according to their own system using GPS. It's a very useful and easy to handle method of knowing the space use. Thank you very much. Any question?
Thank you very much. It was very, very, very interesting. There should be many questions or comments, please.
May I ask question about the climate change impact on the tropical rainforest? As you may know, in East Africa, in the arid area, the current climate change issues is pushing more frequent drought in East Africa arid area, which give huge impact on pastoralists. I would like to know how about the climate change impact on the tropical rainforest and how it impacts the local life of pygmy people.
You mean climate change is because of the global warming or some global, in a global scale?
Yes.
Or just the local?
Yes, especially from the global scale,
Okay.
which cause like natural disasters.
There are many projects addressing that issue, people's life and climate change, because some people want to get fund for research using that term. But in Central Africa, it is not obvious. The climate change is not obviously seen, as far as I know. No increase in the rainfall, no decrease in the rainfall. But there are many projects addressing that issue. Anyway.
How about natural disaster?
Natural disaster, no, I don't hear.
Much for sharing your project in the third part. Because I've been really chasing all the NTFP studies and also I was checking the latest NTFP related project. So my question is that for the NTFP product you are going to develop, who is going to be a buyer? Like a buyer means a customer for the, that's the first question. And then second question is that this place is how far from the city? Well, city can be small city, but those two.
I see. Who is the buyer? The buyers come from within the country, within Cameroon, and also from Nigeria and other countries. In the population of about 700 people, currently between 10 to 15 buyers, especially for NTFPs, and also they are buying cocoa beans. But when the cocoa bean is not available, they are buying NTFPs. They always stay in the village, so they buy it. And sell it in the major towns, in the capital, Yaoundé, it's about 800 kilometers from the place. They don't mind. But still, the Cameroon government, especially the Ministry of Forestry, want to export it to Nigeria, the major market.
Just read some article that if this product is in a competition to the bigger market, there is a possibility for the competition, and the price goes down, and then it's going to be hard. So that's why I asked.
At the moment, not so much intensively collected, so at the moment it's okay. But there will be a danger if the price becomes higher, more people will be engaged in collecting, so it will be a problem. But before that, we want them to establish the management system to control, like the fishermen in the Japanese coastal areas.
Thank you very much.
My colleague at the Gaikokugo Center, he's from Cameroon.
Yeah. I see.
And he's always concerned about the political situation. They've had the same president for how long? For like 100 years or something?
No.
Or, I mean, yeah.
No, this is the,
Yes.
but president is the second president since independence.
Right. So
it took quite a long time.
Yeah, sure. So has the political situation ever created risk for your work at all, or do you have a good relationship?
Cameroon is, relatively speaking, Cameroon is a stable country compared to Central Africa and Congo, and Chad. It's much more stable. So people know what is the outcome of the confusion in their neighbors.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have Kyodai has a good working relationship with the ministry.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
We have also good relationship with Congo, Cameroon, and Kenya. Yeah. About 12 countries in Africa, we have a contract, agreement, exchange agreement.
So I'm just one more question. So the money for Kyodai, does that come from the Koseisho, or where does that come?
No, it's a grant. For the most of the time, it comes from the Mombusho.
It comes from Mombusho. Okay.
But this project in Cameroon is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Oh, it's Gaimusho.
JICA.
Oh, this is JICA.
And for the money used in Japan, domestic use, is from JST.
Okay.
Money used in Cameroon is from JICA.
From JICA. Okay.
So we have now ample source.
Thanks for interesting this information for Africa. So I just one question for this area that has so many charging. So I want to know about this education for them.
For children.
Yeah.
Education, yeah. Most of the Baka people go to the school run by Catholic missionaries. They have also government school, but if they go to government school, they are discriminated by the, farming people. So they don't want to send their children to the government school. Rather, they like to send their children to Catholic missionaries.
So I just.
But from time to time, there are few who completed the course.
Free for
Yeah.
to them. Oh, yeah.
Because in the dry season, they enter into the forest, and the children follow their parents into the forest.
Yeah. So I just confused about this. If also this kind of charging, if this forest, they have some some knowledge how to live in this forest. If they're outside for also to take some education, so they maybe don't know how to keep their life in the forest.
That is very important.
Yeah,
If they always stay in the boarding school without returning to the forest, they have no chance to learn about how to live in the forest. So that is a problem. That is really a problem. I will, if I have a chance, I have a fund for that purpose, I will do that kind of research. The difference in the knowledge of forest between those who received school education, who are receiving school education, and those who are not.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Any obligation from the government, need to pay tax or need to follow some duty?
Who, the pygmy people?
Different people.
Yes.
They also belong
Yes.
to Cameroon.
Yes, they are Cameroon citizens, and now they are with the assistance of World Bank, they are given an identity card, and for going to the school, even a small amount they must pay, and tax they are requested to pay, but much less than the ordinary farmers. But actually, only a few of them pay. In principle, they are requested, they are obliged to pay, but actually not. They don't pay. Not all of them pay.
Kind of thing. How does the Cameroon government treat them?
The problem for them, problem. But they are seen as sort of special people because according to the standard of World Bank, they are classified as indigenous people who are entitled to receive special care from the government. But the Cameroon government, until very recently, want all the citizens in Cameroon are same. But actually, now their attitude toward indigenous people are changing because of the pressure from outside.
Historically, I'm in Japan, Native American in USA, or others, majority want to force them to be majority.
Well, but Cameroon itself has nearly 200 ethnic groups. So, what do you mean majority? Of course, they encouraged to be farmers.
Question from Master Sensei Lab, who are studying very close subject. No? From maybe my question. Huh? Someone who,
増田って増田美沙さん？増田美沙？うん、よく知ってる。
That's why I expected many questions. No? I think 50, you said 50 to 60 million people
Yeah.
living depending on the forest.
Forest in the Central Africa.
This is a rather big issue. And as Ichikawa said, you know, human activity living in the forest is important for forest ecosystem itself. You know, that's why this point is very important. I think this question is big in environmental study. That's why 56 million. I was a little bit surprised. 50 to 60 million living depending on the forest.
Half of the Japanese population.
Some people with the forest. And thinking at the same time the consideration climate change. Very interesting subject. Okay.
Thank you very much for your interesting topic. I want to know about the project recently you conducted in Cameroon. I found like most of the field workers are local people, but most of them are educated people, and most seems like are young and they are men. And how about the ladies' indigenous
Good
knowledge?
question. Good question. Because we have also our female relatives, female colleagues in the field. So she is doing that kind of research. And to work with, of course, we asked some of the women to work with us. So she didn't appear in the slide, but we asked some of the women. But a few women can write and read. Compared, cannot, few women can write, not many women can write. Can write, cannot write. Many women cannot write.
But like in my case, I'm studying in African of Maasai people's indigenous knowledge. In my field, like the women's regarding to their age, and also men, they have different knowledges of the environment, and regarding to their subsistence in the study areas, the knowledge is different. Like even the same plants, maybe different people comes out different knowledge. So
you are studying the pastoralist.
yes, so that's why I'm concerned about.
Pastoralist has an age set system, but age grade age set system. But in Central Africa, forest areas, even the farmers have no such system. So, but some women, of course, can write and read and work with us actually. But more men can receive education at school. That's why we likely to work with the man rather than women. But my women colleague usually work with women.
Okay, thank you.
I had the impression that baby children and adults both are rather, how can I say,
healthy.
nutritionally well.
No, healthy.
I had the impression. not
no skin disease, yeah.
But also muscle is okay. I had such impression. Referring to other African people, I knew. Myself also, I saw many different African countries. So they are eating much meat?
Yes, they eat meat and starchy food, yes. But yeah, enough food. And only difference is swollen belly.
Swollen
abdomen, yeah. I don't know why it's gas or gas.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
It depends. Maybe sometimes parasite.
Parasite.
Aside,
I see.
free, but I don't think they are sick.
No, not sick, but normal.
I saw, I look, these children so healthy. That's why my question. What they are eating and about maybe disease.
I seldom saw baby familiar in the television. The thin, very thin children, malnutrition children in the forest areas among the pygmies. Very seldom.
Another interesting thing for me was they have a special animal enemy.
Yeah.
Bad animals and good
Yeah.
animals. How are they different?
No, not for all of us, not all of them. Some animals are dangerous for some people.
Yes.
Particularly those with strong smells, like carnivorous animals, like a genet. Genet has a strong scent here. That's dangerous, causing bad fever for the children or the children of the man who eat that meat. Not himself, but his children.
Who share? Certainly, that means among them they are sharing. They are sharing such.
Yes, they know.
For example, mini crocodile is causing diarrhea. That's right. According to them. But this idea is being shared.
It's not common. Some people say this is okay. Some people say this is dangerous. It's different from people to people. But most dangerous animals' notion is shared. But there are some less dangerous animals, the knowledge of which is not shared. Okay, they refuse it, okay, but I eat it. And after the children become ill, or they think of the reason, the factor, affect the cause of the disease. Oh, probably I ate such an animals. I ate,
For example, mini crocodile, how it is related with diarrhea for me?
Nothing to.
Mysterious. But they believe that if they eat mini crocodile, they get diarrhea.
They may get diarrhea. They may get diarrhea. They may not, but there is a possibility that may get, not always.
Not just touch or something.
No, just eat, But most dangerous animals are dangerous with just a touch. But some less dangerous animals, if not eaten, it's okay. But
I think it's very interesting because they are contacting very frequently with animals, right? Because they are hunting, gathering people. But for them, there are such kind of dangerous animals. It's very interesting. Another question, any questions? That's my small question.
In the 1990s, the economic crisis increased the logging. So are there any study or data that how much this logging activity affecting their livelihood? That's number one question. And the second question is that, so logging concession, so obviously those people are hunter-gatherers, they are moving. So, but then when I believe government gives the concession, is there any consideration about people's territory?
You mean the impact of logging on the livelihood of the people? This is very difficult. But the increase in the logging activities, we have data. The amount of export, amount of licenses, increase in the amount of licenses, we have that data. But impact of livelihood is difficult And the second question?
Second question is that you mentioned that there is a logging concession. So when government gives the concession, is there any consideration of the where people live?
Okay. There are very good system, but not very observed. It's first, if the company wants the logging concession, they must submit sustainable forest management plan in 30 years' time to cut the forest areas one by one from place to place. In the program, 30-year management plan to submit. And at the same time, there is in-kind contribution to the local community. That is called cahier de charge, the note of obligation in French. That includes the in-kind contribution in the form of infrastructure improvement, school building, dispensary grouping, direct contribution by the logging company to the local communities. That is without the agreement of that in-kind contribution, government would not give concession permit.
That sounds really good comparing to what happened in Peru. Concession doesn't work really. It's lots of illegal still.
But still that system doesn't work very well. People, logging company promised, that promise not often realized. If the village people complain, the logging company give some amount of money to the village head, chief, that's all.
Thank you.
Maybe the last question. I think one of the key findings of your research is that local people's activities in the forest may contribute to the energy flow of the forest and they contribute to the biodiversity of the forest. But when you talk with people who are working for the forest management, conservation issues, probably they may, when they focus on local people, they may say those are people who destroy the forest. So I would like to know how much your findings have influenced those kind of thinkings. Even in Japan, I think people who work for the forest conservation and national park conservation will probably see local people as the people who destroy those nature environments.
You are right, but the situation is moving towards improvement, I hope. But not at the moment, because if the conservationists include the people's matters in the program will be very complicated and difficult. But without the conservation of the people, now the conservation will not be accepted by the government and the international communities. So the situation is changing. But actually, it's not promised. It's promised, but not very well realized. Even the Convention of Biological Diversity clearly mentioned importance of conservation, the consideration of local people, local societies, but it is not. Even the WWF, whenever they submit a master plan, they mention about the people living there, but actually they do nothing. That is the problem. Formally, okay, we are caring about the people, but actually not very much.
How about the young researchers who working with your research project?
Well, we are always talking with that matter with the students. So they are becoming part of us, on our side. I hope. They are always with most, on the side of good chance, say.
My question is, did
For the first time in '74, I went to the Zaire, alone myself, catching the housing. Yes, in the beginning I used a tent in the forest, but the tent didn't last long. After 2, 3, 4 months, it was broken. So I asked the people to make a similar hut and a bed, very good bed. Yeah.
So you continue to observe the same, community?
No. The first time I went to DRC, but eastern part of DRC, which is now in a state of war. So I haven't been there for nearly 20 years.
Now, my question is, as you have long career of the research on site, in the field, what do you feel now? If you look back the history of research on Africa.
You mean change or not change? What aspect of change I have observed? Well, actually, they haven't changed as I had expected before. Because of the political instability and economic situation hindered them to change. Some, probably in DRC, the situation even went back compared with the age of my stay in the 1970s. Because at the time there are bus service between the Ituri forest and Kisangani. It's 500, 600 kilometers. There is a bus service once a week, but it was impossible. The road was completely destroyed. But recently I heard they're renovated by Chinese, but I don't know where there is still a bus service there. But until, say, 5, 6 years ago, the infrastructure was completely destroyed there. So no school, because no salaries for the school teachers. People, where there is teachers, there are teachers, the village people pay in kind. Palm oil, meat, no cash. Traditional method, yeah.
But it is said that recently economic growth in African countries is really
For resource-rich countries, resource-rich countries, yes. For other countries, not very good.
So no more question? If so, let's close. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.